So it's worth our time and attention to consider how the Russians are talking about the strike on Sumy. I'm going to show you what Solovyev and others are saying here. But before I do, let me set the table. So let's start with this. There was a missile strike on Sumy yesterday with cluster munitions. It was used deliberately to kill as many civilians as possible. There was no military purpose. There was some speculation about maybe that there was, but it turns out that there wasn't. The strike on the city of Sumy was a conscious attack on civilians. That's called a war crime. Okay. President Trump reacted to the Russian strike on Sumy yesterday, saying, "I think it was terrible, and I was told that they made a mistake." I don't know who's advising him that's telling him that they made a mistake in a sense like, oh, well, this was the wrong place or whatever. But he's kind of sweeping it under the rug. And then after sweeping it under the rug, he goes on about how this war never would have started. So I'm not going to play that. Okay. Russia then attacked Sumy again today, according to local authorities. It was a drone attack, and you can see a big, smoke cloud from that. Okay, now this was Margarita Simonyan, the head of RT, talking about this yesterday. I'm going to show you two versions of what she had to say. I said yesterday that one thing could derail the peace in Ukraine, a manufactured atrocity big enough to impress Trump. Okay, so she's suggesting that this is manufactured. No, you with ballistic missiles hit Sumy, a civilian center in Sumy. And then you're going to call this a manufactured thing? Today, we have Sumy. I wish I did not have to play Cassandra. What does she mean by place Cassandra? So let's look at that. Wikipedia, Cassandra in ancient Greek mythology, sometimes referred to as Alexandra in Greek mythology, was a Trojan priestess dedicated to the god Apollo and fated by him to utter true prophecies but never to be believed. In modern usage, her name is employed as a rhetorical device to indicate a person whose accurate prophecies, generally of impending disaster, are not believed. So she's saying she's telling the truth, but it's not going to be believed. I wish I did not have to play Cassandra. Ukraine's paymasters both stage and amplify these lethal productions. So as if, I mean, she's just literally adding insult to injury here. They double tap with ballistic missiles, and then she says that it's all staged. Macron and Kellogg's visceral thrill seeps through the words of their condemnations. Yeah, so they're excited about this. These desperate escalations mean only one thing: we are close. Okay, that's what she's saying yesterday. Now, let's look at over here at what she said after that, because that was the first thing that she said. What happened in Sumy is exactly what I talked about yesterday on air with Dmitry Kulikov. That's a similar story will be passed off as a new Bucha. Well, okay, so Bucha was not a fabrication, although the Russians said that Bucha was a fabrication. And then she's saying that this is going to be passed off as a new Bucha. And this will be done with great support from the press and other dramaturgy to impress the impressionable Trump. And this is a slang word for Ukrainians, will try to make a new Bucha all the time because this is the only way for them to prolong the war now. Wait. She's saying that the Ukrainians want to prolong the war, but they've agreed to a peace settlement, but the Russians haven't agreed to a peace settlement, but they want to have peace. Of course, they want to have peace on their terms of give up those 4 oblasts, and then you can just have peace. That's the easy way, according to Witkoff. The necessary reaction has already been received, not only from Europeans like Macron, but also from the U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, Kellogg. So they're reacting to Kellogg saying that this is wrong. And many leaders all around the world were saying how wrong this was. And by the way, if you have an event like this, doing it on something like Palm Sunday is probably a bad idea, because then it becomes the Palm Sunday Massacre or the Easter Uprising or the whatever, so it was kind of bad form to do it on that particular day. Okay. Next, Anton Gurashenko talking about what Solovyev said. Russian propagandists received instructions to lie about the Russian strike on Sumy yesterday. Simonyan took to X to say that such a story will be passed off as a new Bucha, as I just showed you. Russian propagandists try to pass this off as Ukraine's wish to continue the war. Nothing can be further from the truth. Ukraine has accepted the U.S. offer of an unconditional 30-day ceasefire. They have. Russia hasn't. We're into a second month where Russia hasn't. I'm grateful to all Western leaders who have stated clearly that the world knows who has committed the crime. Russia must bear responsibility for its war of tea. Okay, now with that said, let's hear what Solovyev had to say. We're going to just read his words. Okay, let me mute this. When I was preparing for the air, of course, I could not help but watch the information coming from Sumy. It's interesting that Deutsche Welle, of course, immediately blames us. It's interesting that Deutsche Welle, of course, immediately blames us for everything. Well, okay, there's two sides of a war, and the Ukrainian civilians are hit by Russians regularly, and yesterday hit by 2 ballistic missiles in Sumy. So who else are they going to blame? A strike on a city center, a large number of dead. If you read Deutsche Welle, you get the feeling that traditional German propaganda, of course, coupled with British propaganda, is trying to create another Bucha as a traditional, I will repeat this word once again because we see it all the time during this war, attempt by the Ukrainian government to derail the possibility of any agreements. So they're on message. When you're hearing it from multiple sources saying almost the exact same words, that's being on message. There's like instructions. They know what they're trying to say and pass off. So as soon as Putin has a 4.5-hour conversation with Donald Trump's representative, something happens immediately. Okay, now that's a really interesting thing that he's trying to pass off. It's because now that's a really interesting thing that he's trying to pass off. This is trying to derail because Witkoff was just meeting with Putin and they're so close to a deal. But then the Ukrainians went and did this. Did the Ukrainians shoot a missile at their own people? Is that what happened? Or was it a Russian missile that did this and now you're trying to play it off as they're trying to derail peace talks by making up something that's fake? Okay. And it's not even just the actual propagandists that are doing this. Sergei Simonyan highlighted this the other day. A Russian woman sends her greetings to Ukrainians after Russia has killed at least 21 and wounded 83 people. This is just an average Russian woman doing what Russians apparently do. Happy Palm Sunday, Euro-fascists. Rejoice, crooked tooth freaks, that the Ukraino-Nazi children died in Sumy, grunting and choking on blood in front of their festering parents. This is not a pig farm. This is the cleansing of the world from blank. This is what just an average Russian is writing. And this is because we're seeing things like this. And so when this message keeps going and going and going and going, people eventually get it. I'll leave you with this. Darth Putin, this is the parody site. This is not related to that. Was saying, and I showed this morning, in a week, your leaders will have forgotten about Palm Sunday. Just like they forgot about the hospitals, the kindergartens, the shopping centers, the theaters, the playgrounds we bombed. I'm afraid that's correct. And it's very sad. All right, my friends, tell me what you thought about this in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what's going on with the messaging from the propagandists in Russia. Thank you for your time. Thank you for clicking the like button. Thank you for the subscribes. Thank you for sharing this with other people who need to see just what's going on. Thank you more than anything for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.